All right, joining us to share his views on the President's State of the Nation address is political analyst Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. Professor, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Now, as can be expected, the address has received mixed reactions. Let's start with the aspect on the fallen soldiers. That is where he started, acknowledging them by name and rank, and then also including the part that their presence in the DRC was not in pursuit of resources or territorial power, almost addressing the allegations we heard from some MPs that the SANDF could have been in the DRC to protect business interests of others. What did you make of just that aspect of the President's address?
Thank you for having me, Mfundo. Yes, of course, the President did the right thing by starting with the issue of our soldiers who perished in the DRC. That was expected because it's a burning issue and it's a concern not just to their families, but to all of us as South Africans. I think there are two things that happened there. On the one hand, the President did the right thing, as I'm saying, but then on the other hand, the President was not supposed to use this speech to respond to his critics. Because the moment you do that, then you become someone who's defensive. That is not something that you are supposed to do. The State of the Nation address is for you to be honest and blunt about issues, and not to use the State of the Nation address to cover up certain things. So I don't think on that one he did well. But in terms of addressing this issue, he was absolutely right.
But is this not what many have been criticizing him for? That he needs to be forthright, come out when there's some level of criticism, he needs to address it. If there are mistruths, he must be the first person to address it. That because we had one MP stating that possibly their presence in the DRC is to protect private interests, that it's one individual, but perhaps this is a sentiment shared across many in society. So would it not have been the opportune time at the State of the Nation address to address this very situation, or at least that aspect, that what is the nature of their presence there?
Sis Fondo, the platform was wrong. The intention was good, but the platform was wrong. You remember that there is always an opportunity for both the President and the Deputy President to go and address members of the National Assembly, to answer questions in the National Assembly. That is the platform then that the President can use to address those issues and those criticisms, but not to use the State of the Nation address to do that. For me, even if what he did was right, but the platform was totally wrong.
Then to the medium-term development plan that the President indicated that as the GNU they've agreed on, which among others includes driving inclusive growth and job creation. He said to achieve this, they need to strengthen the role of the Public Service Commission in the appointment of key people who must direct the affairs of government. What did you make of this aspect? Does it start with those you deploy to government?
You know, Sis Fondo, we're going to have a problem here because there are certain things that government says which will not apply to them. Let's take the retirement age, for example. You and I know that between 60 and 65 we're supposed to stop working. And then what is the retirement age in Parliament? You tell me. There are people who are 80 or 90 who are still in Parliament. And then, of course, they expect us to leave work as soon as you are 60 or 65, whatever the case is. That is one thing. Then the second thing is that whenever our politicians make statements, you should not take them seriously because they will tell you they are going to build 5 million jobs when they know they are going to make, create only 1 million jobs. So there is one thing that, of course, we need to consider when we listen to politicians. The reason why we have this coalition government is not out of choice. It was dictated to the politicians by you and I as voters. So there is a one point of departure. So now, the DA was in the opposition until the 6th administration. Now they are part of the collective. All of a sudden, they think that miracles are going to happen. That's not going to happen. They are only saying this because they also contributed to this State of the Nation address. So they are now all responsible for whatever goes wrong, and it's no longer the ANC that is the culprit.
Now, we heard from the President that indeed they are embarking on this massive infrastructure build. He indicated that they'll be unlocking 100 billion of financing for this infrastructure build program. What did you make of that statement? Will they be able to raise the 100 billion?
You know, Sis Mfondo, the problem with our president is that he's very good in terms of making promises, but he runs short when it comes to implementation. Ask yourself the question, what happened to the New Dawn? Maybe from where I come from, Ngwavuma in northern KwaZulu-Natal and Umkanyagute, the dawn is not set yet. The president talked about the new dawn. He is almost on the exit door and the dawn is not set yet. Number two, he talked about 9 wasted years under his predecessor. The question is, what has it done right to rectify the situation? Didn't we move from 43 to 41 in terms of the corruption index? If the answer is in the affirmative, then of course something is terribly wrong. So all the things that the president was talking about sound good on paper, but when it comes to implementation, it will be something else. Whether it's industrialization, the policy that he says is going to be finalized, or addressing the water crisis. I come from Ngwavuma. We have Jozini Dam. I went there over the weekend for a funeral. The dam was opened because it's too full. But people locally don't have water. How to explain that? And then he says
wouldn't
the
some,
water
pardon me for interjecting just in the interest of time, wouldn't some be heartened though by the fact that they're looking to expand the role of the private sector here? That if government doesn't have the funds for this broad infrastructure build program, they're going to rope in the private sector, because for the longest time there's been that difficult relationship between government and the private sector, especially because of the political considerations, where it was said at many times that the ANC should not seek to have the private sector playing a greater role in that which is the function of government. So in this instance, wouldn't many be heartened by the fact that the capital is going to come from the private sector?
How many times, Mpondo, have we heard about this public-private partnership? Is it new? Definitely not. So what has stopped the government from working with the private sector? Because truth be told, most of the jobs are created by the private sector. They are also in a position to attract more investment, but government has to make sure that legislation is in place to create an environment where the private sector is going to operate. We've heard this before. We've been told that the public-private partnership is going to be enhanced, and we've heard it again yesterday. So I'm not basically averse to the idea that we must have that cooperation between the two, but the reality is that when it comes to implementing what we've said, we are lacking. That is where the problem is.
All right, Professor, thank you very much for your insights this afternoon. That's political analyst Professor Bheki Mngomezulu there, giving us his views on the State of the Nation address.